So we celebrate today the feast of a great saint, Saint Padre Pio of Pietrelcina. So I'm just going to talk about Saint Padre Pio a little bit. In Italy, there is a huge devotion to Padre Pio, particularly because he's really a contemporary saint, a very modern saint. In fact, you can go to YouTube. If you go to YouTube, if you've never done this, you need to, and type in Padre Pio celebrating Mass, and you can actually watch footage of Padre Pio celebrating Mass, and you can actually see him lifting up the host with the stigmata on his hands. Because before he died, they had cameras and all these great things, and so it's really, really neat. If you've never done that, do that. For those of you who are online, stop watching and go and watch that because it's cooler than me. But anyways, in Italy, not that everybody always goes to church all the time, but they're definitely very culturally Catholic. And we as American seminarians, we used to talk about it as the Franciscan Trinity. And every business, like at their cash register, you knew they were a good Catholic family if the Franciscan Trinity was there. So let's just try to guess here. If you were gonna create a Franciscan Trinity, who would be the three persons of the Trinity? Well, of course, today is Padre Pio. Who else? St. Anthony, which, by the way, we have two images of St. Anthony right next to it. The Italians would be going nuts right now that we have a statue and a painting right next to each other. This would be their church. The Italians would go crazy. And then the other one, of course, is St. Francis from Assisi. So, in their storefronts, if you would always have, Padre Pio with the stigmata hand and St. Anthony and St. Francis all, right next to each other. If all three of them were there, you knew that it was a good business, and you should probably do business there. If there was only one of them, it was questionable. They might not actually love God as much as they should. So I was going to bring my relic. I have a relic of Padre Pio, and my day was crazy. I was up in Indianapolis. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm wearing pants today. So I was up in Indianapolis with the bishop today. Our normal Tuesday meeting got shifted to Wednesday. Anyways, but one of my favorite stories is about relics and Padre Pio anyway, so I think I tell this story every single year, so if you've been to Mass on the Feast of Padre Pio with me, it's one of my favorite stories. But so Padre Pio, because I'm a relic collector, I like relics, and Padre Pio was hearing confessions, and he was hearing confessions in kind of out in the open, but there was a grill between him and the penitent, and it was a woman going to confession. That doesn't mean anything, but it was the woman going to confession. And while she was confessing her sins, she had reached her hand around the screen and started tugging on Padre Pio's brown habit. And she had a pair of sewing scissors with her. And she cut off a part of his brown habit. And she really didn't want to go to confession. She really just wanted to steal from Padre Pio. And so he feels someone tugging at his cassock, so he looks down and he sees this woman who has a pair of scissors in her hand and is trying to cut off part of his brown cassock, and he grabs her hand, which of course we would never do these days, right? And he says, "What are you doing?" And she says, it's so awesome. She says, "I want relics from the holy priest." And he grabbed the scissors and he grabbed the cloth back and says, "Go and make your own relics." Meaning what? Go and be a saint yourself. It's so awesome. I say this, of course, and I have 40-some dead people in my chapel, which is so awesome. But anyways, nonetheless, go make your own relics. Don't steal from my cassock. Anyways, there you go. Okay, so some of my favorite quotes of Padre Pio, because he's so quotable. If you haven't read much about Padre Pio, he's great. And by the way, I just want to give a plug into Formed. Actually, I think the whole thing is on YouTube as well. But if you have not watched the Ignatius Press movie on Padre Pio, I just think it's so good. If you haven't seen it, it'll get a little scary every now and then, with the devil stuff. It's so good because it's real and it's true. Speaking of that, the first quote is about the devil. And it's just, once again, so practical, so true. He says this: "Have courage and don't fear the assaults of the devil. Remember this forever. So he's saying this, remember this forever. It is a heavenly sign if the devil shouts and roars around your conscience. I'll repeat that. It is a heavenly sign if the devil shouts and roars around your conscience, since this shows that he's not inside your will. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, then he says this about the importance of us being persistent in prayer, persistence in silent prayer, persistence in our devotions. He says this: have patience and persevere in the holy exercise of meditation and prayer. Be content to begin with small steps. Eventually, you'll have legs to run and then wings to fly. But be content with small steps. Be content with small steps. Now let's talk about Padre Pio and the Mass, because we're at Mass and it's awesome. Padre Pio says this: every Holy Mass heard with devotion produces in our souls marvelous effects, abundant spiritual and material graces which we ourselves do not even know. Just being at Mass. He says this: if we only knew how God regards the sacrifice of the Mass, we would risk our lives to be present at a single Mass. If we only knew how God regards this sacrifice, we would risk our lives at being present at a single Mass. So Cardinal Sarah, in quoting the Martyrs of Abetine that I mentioned in my homily this past weekend, did the exact same thing, and they risked their lives, and in fact, they gave their lives to be at Mass. And then Padre Pio, one of his famous, most famous quotes, many of you have probably heard this quoted again and again. He says, "The earth could exist more easily without the sun than without the holy sacrifice of the Mass." So welcome to Mass. Welcome to the sacrifice of Calvary. Welcome to the mercy of God poured out to us. Welcome to God's love for the world. Welcome to grace, to mercy. Welcome to our hope. Welcome to our destiny. May Padre Pio, who lives in our destiny, may Padre Pio, who lives in our future, pray for us now.